Welcome everybody. Hello, this is our panel discussion about ethics and digital rights. I'm Michele Di Paola and I will be the facilitator of the panel discussion for today. Together with me, there's Laimonas Ragaukas on the technical side and part of the digital transformers team, Maya Drobne, that is going to introduce you all to what's happening today. So I'm quickly passing the floor to Maya.
Hello and warm welcome from my side as well. I'm actually the project manager of this digital transformers course that we are implementing, and this is the fifth panel in a row. We have been discussing variety of aspects actually to digital transformation, everything from digital well-being, digital participation, and inclusion. Then we discussed as well like what digital transformation is. We tackled the aspect of digital sustainability, and today the topic is on ethics and digital rights. The whole training course has been, I would say, like a very interesting digging deeper into the different aspects, and we as well are preparing for you a lot of materials that are focusing on everything that we have been talking about, and actually really looking forward as well to today's debate. We have very interesting speakers on board, and we would very much appreciate if you cooperate with us, ask questions, and participate in our debate. So, Michele, thank you, and the word is yours.
Thanks, Maya, and also thanks for mentioning the possibility for our audience to participate. And I'm starting to ask them all to write down in the comments on whatever social media channels they are attending our panel discussion, where are they connecting from, where are they in this moment, and also which can be their connection with the topic of today. So, what's their connection to digital ethics and digital rights? So that we can gather a bit of knowledge about our listeners and our audience from the social media channels, indeed. And meanwhile, while you start writing about you, about where you are and what's your connection to the digital rights, I'm going to introduce you to the panelists of the day. In a while, there will be a screen to be shared. Here it comes. And here are also our guests for the day. We start with Marina Bikova, project manager and vice chairwoman at CG Erfurt. She's a graduate of international relations and is currently finishing her specialization in public policy. And Marina engages with migrant communities and youth in Erfurt, in the region of Thuringia, in Germany, on the topics of digital communication and digital citizenship. She co-facilitated online courses on many topics: 3D design, 3D printing, drone piloting, and digital rights and responsibilities, using non-formal education methodology, and she's a member of the European Digital Education Hub. And she will be our first guest, but we also have with us Charlene Doutramont. She's a legal expert with a specialization in European law, human rights, international technology law, and bioethics. She brings valuable contribution to discussion on the impact of emerging technologies on society, human rights, and ethics, and she's determined to find balanced solution to the challenges posed by emerging technology and to safeguard human dignity in the future with biotechnology. Charlene is a consultant for UNESCO's Communications and Information Sector, Digital Innovation and Transformation section, where she focuses on the AI and the rule of law. And then, last but not least, Andreas Karsten, nerdy researcher and geeky journalist, worked for more than 25 years in the youth sector at the junction of policy, research, media, and practice. Andreas works at the Youth Policy Labs, the global think tank hosting the website youthpolicy.org, and coordinates the transnational research activities of RAY, the self-governed network on the research-based analysis of the European youth programs. Andreas loves interweaving with new and old media with youth work and non-formal education, and he is an avid blogger, podcaster, interviewer, technician, and producer. Mhm. All right, so I'm closing my screen sharing, also to remembering everybody that we also have a graphic recording ongoing of this panel, as we always do, and with us, we have our Dace Anderson, which is already on duty, writing on her iPad and drawing the graphic recording for the day. And later on, she will maybe show already some part of the work she's going to create for us to graphically record all the discussion. So thank you in advance, Dace, for your work. And now it's time to start. I'm inviting you again, wherever you are, to let us know exactly where you are in the audience, and to write down your connection also to our topic of the day, digital rights, digital ethics. And that's also what we want now to start discussing with our panelists. We, as usually do, are going to ask one question to our three guests together, and then going a bit deeper in their specific backgrounds to close the discussion again with a common request. So my first question, it's regarding, as always, what we are talking about here. Uh, I would maybe start with Marina, and then we can hear from Charlene, and then we move to Andreas for this question. So we're talking here about a topic which is sounding very important, ethics and digital rights. And also in the digital transformers training course that Maya mentioned before, we spent quite some time to define what we mean when we say the words digital rights, ethics connected with digital rights. Uh, we found out that somehow it could be easier to agree upon digital rights, what they are, what they mean for us, and maybe uh, intending them as a possible extension of human rights inside digital spaces, or a set of possible new rights regarding new realities created by the digital transformation, and maybe a bit more complicated to recognize ethical principles behind them. But now we are very curious to ask the three of you about what you mean with digital rights, when you what you mean when you talk about digital rights. Uh, so based on your perspective, experiences, backgrounds, what could be your definition and your take about digital rights? So we define our starting topic. I will maybe pass the floor to Marina to hear her answer, and then to Charlene, and then to Andreas. But I invite you from now already. Feel free to also comment and intervene to each other's answer when it's your time. Please, Marina.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here on the panel. And indeed, the topic is extremely relevant for the youth sector and for educators who engages with young people. In our case, myself and my team, we engage with human rights education, and of course, noticing that young people spend more and more time online in the internet, on social media. That brings us to the question, how do they exercise their rights? Are they aware of their rights in the online sphere, and whether this is something of their concern if those rights are broken or violated? And we decided as a team to use the approach of provided by the European Convention on Human Rights for All Internet Users, which reinforces that the human rights will be protected and respected and brought into the digital sphere and exercised there. So in terms of digital rights per se, we mean freedom of expression and information online, rights to privacy and data protections, right to access internet, right to non-discriminatory usage of the online spaces, right of assembly, association, participation online, right to education and literacy, protection of children's rights online, and effective remedies and enforcing law being enforced in the online sphere. So it's a common understanding of the human rights brought into the digital realm, and for young people, this would be something they have to be explained about, because they sometimes have interesting approach to how they perceive online sphere and the reality, and do not always transform the perception of the world as it is in the offline space. So that would be our side and take on the digital rights.
Oops, my microphone was muted. So I was saying thank you, Marina, and I'm passing now the floor to Charlene to hear from her as well, her definition, her understanding of digital rights.
Thank you very much. So in the modern era of technology and digitalizations, we all agree that digital rights have become increasingly important, and UNESCO has a strong focus on promoting digital rights and ethics. Echoing the UN Human Rights Council resolution on the promotion and protection of human rights in the internet, instead of creating new rights for the online space, the UN recommended extending the same rights people have offline to the digital world. Thus, basically, we consider digital rights to be the exercise of universal human rights in the digital environment. UNESCO also recognizes the importance of digital rights and need to protect them as fundamental aspects of human rights. In particular, when we talk at UNESCO about digital rights and the ethics behind them, we are referring to the principles, values, and guidelines that should govern these digital technologies. By doing this, UNESCO advocates for certain principles and values that promote the protection and realization of human rights, social justice, and sustainable development. Some of the key principles and values that UNESCO promotes in this regard include the right to universal and equal access, the right to equality, freedom of expression, the right to privacy, digital literacy, and the right to use digital technologies without fear of discrimination or harm. An important aspect to remember when we talk about digital technologies and these digital rights is that they almost always overlap with one another. The right to universal and equal access is very important for UNESCO, as it means that everyone, regardless of their socioeconomic status, geographical location, gender, or any factor, should have access to digital tech and the internet. The right to equality includes the right to be free from discrimination in the online world. And with the increasing use of algorithms and automated decision systems today, it's really important to ensure that these systems do not continue to perpetuate existing biases and discrimination. Then, of course, there's also the right to freedom of expression, which includes this ability to freely express yourself, access information, and communicate with others without censorship or restriction. It's important for personal expression, which again enables individual self-realization. Social media platforms, for example, have become the main channel for people to express their opinions. However, through content moderation or the creation of filter bubbles and echo chambers, the algorithms used by these platforms can limit a person's access to diverse viewpoints, ultimately also affecting their rights to autonomy and, in a way, self-determination. The right to privacy, as we all know, is also very important in the digital age because it promotes trust and confidence and supports the development of a more secure and safe digital environment. Another digital right that is at the core center of UNESCO's work is the right to digital literacy and education. This digital right ensures that individuals have access to use digital technologies more effectively and safely. This includes not only technical skills, but also the ability to critically evaluate what's going on in the digital space. Last but not least, as we're talking about ethics, UNESCO is also focused on the ethical use of digital technologies and especially AI. As digital tech, especially AI, become a more integrated part of our daily lives and society as a whole, it's important for us to ensure that it's developed and used in an ethical and responsible way. which is also in a way the bedrock in terms of UNESCO's work for digital rights. So overall, UNESCO's advocacy for ethical digital rights is grounded in the belief that digital tech can be harnessed to promote human rights, social justice, and sustainable development for the public good. But this requires us to commit to ethical principles and values that prioritize well-being and dignity of all. Also, now that we're talking about youth here, in terms of digital rights and youth, it's also interesting to mention that the UN Committee on the Rights of the Child launched a guiding document on children's rights in relation to the digital environment in March 2021. And this document aims to embed children's rights online into the larger framework of what is already the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. So by focusing on children's digital rights, the UN is already recognizing the growing importance of digital technologies and impact on children. So to promote digital rights and ethics, UNESCO works with governments, civil society organizations, and multiple other stakeholders such as the tech industry, private sector, and so on, to develop policies and practices to protect individuals' digital rights and promote more ethical use of these. We also provide guidance and training on issues such as internet universality, digital literacy, cybersecurity, and online safety. Overall, we see digital rights and ethics as essential components of a democratic and inclusive society. And by protecting these rights and promoting ethical practice throughout, we can ensure that everyone has equal opportunities to participate in this digital age and to benefit from the opportunities that digital tech bring, as we all know about. So now it's up to all of us here to take action to protect these rights and promote the values, whether it's advocating for governmental policies or supporting organizations like UNESCO to work and promote digital ethics, or simply being more aware of what digital tech is and the violations it can bring in terms of human rights. We all have a critical role in shaping the digital world of the future. So that is my take on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Charlene. And let's now give the floor to Andreas to hear also from him his perspective on digital rights and ethics. Andreas, please.
Thank you, Michele. And fair warning, I'm going to make this very short because I have practically nothing to add to the elaborations of my fellow panelists here, who I think have made very clear that digital rights is a concept that mostly speaks to the realization of human rights in digital arenas and spheres and places, and that while we have largely agreed institutionally and in society about the importance of tackling human rights in the digital space, our current discourses are around practices and how do we protect human rights in digital spaces? How do we negotiate in societies how these human rights should play out? And so there's really not so much more to add. You know, we have just since a couple of weeks ago a signed European Declaration on the digital rights and principles for the digital decade, a new framework in the European Union. We have UN resolutions. We have all the work that UNESCO has done. We have the work of civil society platforms like EDRI. There's so much out there on digital rights that I think the much more interesting discussion to have is what do we do about them? How do we deal with them in youth work? How do we approach them with young people? How do human rights in digital spheres play out for young people? And where do we fall short? How do we ensure access to digital spheres and the internet for all young people, no matter what their socioeconomic background is, and not so much anymore what digital rights are? And with that, Michele, I'm going to play it right back to you.
Okay, thank you. And thank, of course, the three of you for your contributions. We are getting indeed some comments and questions from our audience. People saying where are they connecting and following us from. So again, greetings to everybody. And also a first few remarks on the topic, which then we will pick up and share with you so that you can also maybe have your say on what our audience is asking us. And in that sense, please, people who are attending this panel and watching us on social media, go on, keep asking questions and putting comments, so then we will pick them up and give them as questions to our panelists. But now I would move a bit further and asking maybe to start answering from your position, your organization's activities, your expertise in the field, uh, and asking more specific questions to each of you. Since the last was Andreas, and he was very eager to send the ball back to me, I'm sending back the ball to him once again, and starting from him this second round, and asking him as a nerdy researcher. I think he defined himself, which is a lovely definition in my opinion. Uh, Researching youth policies, researching media and digital transformation. Andreas, what did you find regarding the acknowledgement of digital rights by young people and other stakeholders, and what could be uh, the ethics behind all of it that we can keep in mind in youth work, especially, but in general? You already partially touched this point when you were commenting that there's a lot out there, and the point is how to put this thing at play and what we can do to foster and make digital right be more present. So I'm now asking from your specific perspective and the research job that you do. What are the data telling us about this? Can we make it? Are we making it? What's the perception? What's the information that you can share with us about that?
Spoiler alert, we are not making it. But so it's, in a way, I mean, digital rights and digital ethics, digitality, sort of as a, as a discourse and concept, is an interesting one in the youth field, because it's one of the few areas where policy is actually ahead of practice, right? That's not common in our field. It's very often that we develop practices in the field. We develop open youth work. We develop social work with young people who have come in conflict with the law. We develop agenda-sensitive youth work, and then through practice and through the pressure of the field and through discourse in the field, then we build policy frameworks that start supporting these new and emerging practices in youth work. And with everything around digitality, it's really exactly the other way around. I mean, the youth sector has mainly slept over anything digital for a really, really, a really long time, and still largely is. Whereas a policy has really built us decent frameworks. We have resolutions from both the Council of Europe and the European Union around digital youth work, digital public policies for young people. We have competence frameworks, both generic ones built by the European Union for citizens, the DICCOM framework, weird abbreviation, but just stands for Digital Competence Framework for European Citizens, abbreviated DICCOM. We have a youth sector adaptation for that, DICCOM Youth Work, that looks at the specific competences that people need who work with young people around digital issues. So there is a lot out there, but then in practice, we lag. And we see this with a couple of things. So in Ray, our research network that looks at the European youth programs, we ask a lot of questions around the implementation of the programs. And one of them that I want to pick out for making my point here is where we ask both project teams and project participants how much they have learned around media literacy and issues related to media literacy. Think of fake news, think of verifying sources, think of these basic competences of verifying information that you encounter online. Now, project teams have become fairly confident in the past 7 years that they're actually doing a reasonably good job in educating project participants on these issues and strengthening their media literacy competences. Project participants, on the other hand, they are not very confident that they are learning much in the projects funded by the European Youth Programs. So we have an increasing gap there with project teams believing they're doing better and better, but project participants actually saying they are not. And that is a typical dilemma that we face in our field at the moment, is that we have a level of qualification among most of the actors in the youth field, whether that's youth work practitioners, whether that's policy responsible colleagues at local or regional level, whether that's researchers who have not enough in-depth and nuanced understanding around the issues of digitality to be able to competently judge the quality of their own work on these issues. And that really is a fundamental problem that we need to tackle in our field. We need a huge qualification offensive, because if all the people who work professionally and voluntarily with young people in youth organizations, in youth clubs, in schools, wherever really, location makes no difference here, if those people do not begin to get vastly better at moving in digital spheres and understanding issues of digitality, we will keep running into all these problems around ethics. And let me maybe give you one practical example of what we mean with that. So imagine the owner of a shopping center came to you, your youth worker in a youth club, came to you and said, you know what, we have a cool offer for young people. They can browse every store in our shopping center. But for us to be able to, put stores there that really interest young people, we want to put a camera in every room of your youth club. So we can, it's nothing bad. We just want to observe a little bit what young people do, learn a little more about their habits and so on. So that when they come to our shopping center, we have the right stores there for them. And we don't have something, I don't know, with things that only interest older people. Now you would send that person with flames to hell. You would shove them out the door and say, are you insane? Of course, we would never allow anyone to put cameras and observe young people and invade their right to privacy in that way in the offline world, right? But in the online world, we do. Right? We have no issue with young people being active on platforms where their right to privacy is constantly violated, where these platforms are run by people who evade the legal mechanisms of which we have too few, but we have some of them. And we are not competent yet as a field overall to help young people get off these platforms or navigate these platforms, defend their own right to privacy. We don't know enough about the technical side of these things. What kind of settings do they have to tweak and twist? We don't know enough about alternatives. I mean, show me the number of youth workers who have moved to Mastodon, for example. It's probably just, like a handful of us. And so, we have a lack of understanding and competence in defending ethically the rights of young people in digital spheres in our field that we need to tackle, and we need to tackle with a lot of resources and a qualification offensive like no other we have seen before in our field. And I think from the work that we see and from the data that we have, that this is very truly urgent. The principle of working with young people that we as a field hold dear is to be close to the realities and lived lives of young people. And we are getting further and further away from that because the digital parts of young people's lives, we as a field do not understand well enough and cannot navigate well enough. And with that, back to you, Michaela.
Thanks, Andreas, for your contribution. Also, for this underlining the need of this offensive of updating the youth work field. Probably even more relevant when said in a panel created by a long-term training course as the one we are trying to establish, which has this exact aim in mind. So to stay a bit on the field, I would now pass the floor to Marina and ask her about another possible example of things that are happening from the field and for the field to try to fill this gap and contribute to sharing more knowledge and more resources on these topics. So Marina, you are one of the people behind the dcpass.eu platform. Maybe we can also put the link in the comments below our streaming, so our audience can visit the website. It's a website which is very rich of materials and insight. So can you tell us more about how and why you decided to create this website and realize this content? You also have an online course, especially and specifically about digital rights. So also another curiosity of mine would be, which are the aims and the contents of this specific offer within the many that you have. So I'm passing the floor to Marina to hear from you.
Thank you so much. I would like to tell about the project we developed together with the partner consortium from the EU countries, and it's called Digital Citizenship Passport for Youth, and it came to existence basically on what Andreas said. We do not understand how young people are engaging with the digital sphere, and we see that they do engage often and intensively, but what particular aspects are they concerned of? What are their needs online? How do they use this space? Those are the questions we were curious of ourselves, and especially back in 2018, when we had the first idea about this project, the General Data Protection Regulation came into power across all EU, and we saw that young people in several cities, and I think in Brussels and Strasbourg, they went on demonstration, and they were concerned how this will affect their presence online and their data protection. So with this, we went to study together young people and youth workers, whether they are ready to engage in the topic of digital education, digital rights and responsibilities. And we looked what other frameworks exist in other parts of the world. And what helped us a lot is the Mike Ribble's framework that came from the book Digital Citizenship in Schools in the US, which basically identified 9 elements of becoming or being part of digital, being a digital citizen, and the guiding principles of how this digital citizenship could be exercised. And those 9 elements include digital ethics, digital access, digital law, digital communication, literacy, commerce, rights, responsibilities, securities, and health and well-being. And in order to explore these topics, the guiding principle would be to learn how to first respect your own rights and responsibilities, educate yourself and others about these rights, and protect yourself and others online. And this helped us to learn further and engage with our young people. Locally in Germany, we ran a focus group and a survey and decided to ask, do young people think they are digital citizens, and whether they feel that there is difference. And interestingly for us, 58% of young people said that there is a difference between being a street citizen, so to say, an online citizen, and that they've heard somewhere the term digital citizen, but what they would define it would mean for them mainly digital rights, belonging to certain online community, being protected online, and being present in the digital realm. And among the elements that we shared with them, these 9 that I mentioned before, they were particularly keen on understanding more digital security for sure, especially in the context of the GDPR law. And second choice was digital access. And this is where indeed we had our hands-on experience in learning about it. Inside this project, Digital Citizenship for Youth, we run local pilot activities, and then a youth exchange in Brussels where we gathered people from Greece, Lithuania, Germany, Cyprus. And together we had the chance not only to, in practice, run certain workshops for them to understand better these 9 elements, but also to clarify how they perceive them. And interestingly, when we use the thermometer method in the room to see whether young people use, for instance, free software or open source software, 98% of young people moved to the side where no, they do not use it, and only 2 persons were aware of such software and were practically using them. And in terms of digital access, that tells us a lot, that most of the young people, they just go on with what is presented to them online, what the peers are using, and only few really deep further and understand what is at stakes when they're using something like a product that is provided by the big tech. And another interesting point of discussion was that, of course, it is very easy to use free resources, Google Docs, for instance, or other platforms that do not require any payment, but at the same time raise concerns for them. Okay, if it's free, then what is the product? Am I the product? What do I pay by engaging with these tools digitally? And for some young people, this was already a topic, and they were very aware of their data and footprint, digital footprint. Others were quite reluctant and still feeling this this is not yet a topic for them to be concerned about. And these findings helped us to understand that we have to perhaps make this concepts and directions of digital citizenship, digital rights explained in a way that young people would care about them, what would actually inspire them to engage in these topics. And this was something for us to try experiential learning. Okay, can we experiment and provide a safe space for this experience offline or online? And of course, when we talk about the digital realm, we have to engage in a blended way, at least, or going fully digital. So that's why we created the online platform with the courses where young people could sign up and learn more about one of these 9 elements, which is, as we learned today, also based on these frameworks developed by the Council of Europe and their digital citizenship education handbook. And overall, this resource helps young people and brings also youth workers, educators further in the topics. But again, what is still necessary to do is to develop practical exercises. From our side, we've tried role plays where people would be representing, participants would be representing a big tech, some will be representing EU stakeholders, others would be the users. And once they see how big the scale of the conversation about their data and the usage of the data and where the data is stored, the more young people become aware of how complex the problem is and start to connect and emphasize with the topic. So experiential learning for us was one of these tools we were trying to bring in, although very difficult to the digital realm, but at least in the room with simulating certain activities and simulating discussions. Yes, with that, I give the floor back to you, Mikhail.
Thank you very much, Marina. We are also getting some questions from our audience. Some of them are, I would say, a bit more general, so I would leave those maybe apart from now, or invite also our audience to refer to the previous panel discussion that can be found on the pages of SALTO Participation and Information and SALTO Inclusion and Diversity to find their questions regarding other topics which are not exactly connected to the topic of today. Other questions will be picked up and asked to our panelists right away, but I will still want to hear something from Charlene. I understand from what I heard so far that we are in a situation which seems kind of, I don't know if strange, but surely rare to me, in which institutions or policies are in this field maybe a bit more advanced than practices in education, and especially in the youth work field. So talking about that level, so the governance of digital technologies, there are topics such as artificial intelligence, which was, by the way, mentioned in a few of our questions we are getting from our audience, for instance, as one of the reasons of problems in the employment level. So these kind of big topics are able to raise a lot of big questions that we can go on discussing for days, but we don't have days, unfortunately. So I would ask Charlene to share with us a few elements that attract your attention and require work and energy at UNESCO to be better defined and framed in terms of digital rights, so that we can have a glimpse of what's happening behind the curtains, and how we are getting platforms, policies, and rules that are somehow trying to cope with the transformation which is happening. So the floor is yours, Charlene.
Thank you. Before I start on UNESCO in more personal capacity, I want to echo on Marina's first points on youth and whether they engage and understand the risks associated with digital tech. As myself, I'm a generation Zoomer, or iGen, as they say. And for my generation specifically, from smartphones to social media, digital technologies revolutionized the way we communicate, entertain ourselves, date, work, sport, game, and everything around us. But when I question my friends about their online privacy, more often than not, I get the same response: I don't mind, I do not do anything wrong. Or when I mention the digital divide and the extreme gap we are creating with digital technologies, if we do not focus on universal access, people always seem to believe that the internet is already universal and that everyone has access everywhere. So this, for me personally, is already a big problem. Like we were talking about youth engagement and understanding. So I think first I need to mention there's an imperative need for advocacy and capacity building in this field. But if we were to focus on UNESCO, UNESCO also recognizes that there's an urgent need to educate people on how their rights are affected and empower them with the tools to guard them. UNESCO has already been working to narrow the digital divide, strengthen digital governance and policies, build human institutional capacities, and so on, from a human rights and ethics perspective. Michaela, to continue on the AI point, UNESCO is extremely involved in emerging technologies, especially artificial intelligence. But let me first start with, for example, one of the primary issues that UNESCO has been working on is recognizing and trying to safeguard, to react towards the digital divide. So whenever certain individuals or communities are unable to access these technologies, they are at a complete disadvantage. This again can limit their ability to exercise other rights, such as access to quality education, freedom of expression, access to information, and even participation in political and social life. Digital divide can also reinforce existing inequalities and discrimination. For example, marginalized communities such as low-income households, rural areas, and certain ethnic and linguistic groups may have limited access, which can in turn result in social and economic exclusion. In response to this, UNESCO has been working on promoting digital rights by promoting the adoption of the Rome Principles through the Internet Universality Framework, according to which the Internet should be human rights-based, open, accessible to all, and nurtured by multi-stakeholder participations. These are intended to advance digital technologies and the internet to advance social, economic, and cultural progress while respecting fundamental rights and freedoms. Also, in terms of, for example, perpetuating discrimination and bias, UNESCO has been working through capacity building on the issue of algorithmic bias. I'm working currently on the AI and the Rule of Law program, where we developed a MOOC last year. And this had shown already that AI-powered predictive policing systems have been criticized widely for bias against communities of colors. Similarly, search engines have also found to be biased. For example, if you were to research the word doctor, for example, you may see more Caucasian men than other groups, even though doctors come from diverse backgrounds, as we all know. There's also a lack of diversity in the tech industry, which can result in products that are biased against certain groups. As we all know, social media platforms can be a breeding ground for harassment, hate speech, which target marginalized groups, and online advertisement can also be targeted and discriminatory. Then, of course, we have the issue of privacy, where this so-called datification of our life means that our personal information, behaviors, and preferences are being transformed into this raw computerized material that can be analyzed and used to tailor our personal online environment. A friend will usually have a different Facebook, Instagram, or TikTok feed than you do. But this, again, can have a significant impact on not only our right to privacy, but also autonomy and our ability to participate fairly in a democratic society. The spread of false and misinformation, I have to mention, is also a very big concern of UNESCO, especially in the recent months with the rise of ChatGPT, Midjourney, and so on. As we've seen with the launch of the Google generative AI BART, misinformation is clearly a risk. And this can have, in turn, significant consequences for individuals on society by impacting human rights, such as the right to access, the right to freedom of expression, and the right to participate. It can also contribute to the spread of hate speech and fuel social diffusions. So, to say all of this, to summarize, UNESCO focuses and promotes on media and information literacy, which can help to resolve some of the risks I just mentioned. This is a key component for UNESCO as digital citizenship. It helps individuals develop critical thinking skills needed to evaluate and navigate the vast amounts of information we have online. Regarding AI, the most important global normative framework that UNESCO has launched now is UNESCO focuses on a human-centered AI. We want AI to be used for the greater interest of the people and not the other way around. Therefore, 2 years ago, in November 2021, the 193 member states at UNESCO Global Conference adopted the recommendations on the ethics of AI, which was the very first global standard-setting instrument of this kind. And it does not only protect, but also promote human rights, human dignity, and it can be used and considered as an ethical guiding compass and the global normative bedrock, allowing to build strong respect for the rule of law in this digital world. We have done a lot through initiatives, advocacy, international cooperation, standard setting, and so on. But I do want to mention that, considering that tomorrow is International Women's Day, UNESCO is also focusing on fostering gender equality in the digital sphere. Exactly 1 year ago, we launched a report on the effects of artificial intelligence on the working lives of women, which recognized that there's a critical need to bridge the divide and address the challenges to enable more inclusive digital societies. Last month, for example, you were talking about digital platforms. In terms of digital platforms, UNESCO is also conducting currently multi-stakeholder consultations to create guidelines for regulation on digital platforms. The guidelines aim to support regulators, governments, legislators, companies, private sectors dealing with content that potentially damages human rights and democracy, all while protecting the freedom of expression and the availability of accurate and reliable information. Last month, in February, UNESCO held the Internet for Trust conference, which brought together 4,300 participants to discuss these guidelines we've been working on and to propose a broader regulatory solution to the ongoing crisis of online information. It underlines the urgent need for common global guidelines to improve reliability of information while protecting human rights. Addressing the risks associated with digital tech requires a concerted effort by all stakeholders, which includes government, civil society, private sectors, the tech sector, and an international organization such as UNESCO. By working together, UNESCO believes that we can ensure that digital technologies are used in a way that promote inclusive and sustainable development, cultural diversity, and the protection of human rights. More importantly, recognizing that young generations are in the midst of this revolution, it's imperative to educate them also on the challenges and their rights in this digital sphere. So back to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now I guess it's time to share with you a few of the questions that we are collecting from our audience on social media platforms. Speaking about platforms, well, there is an ongoing discussion now, which is being opened by a comment regarding algorithm literacy. So understanding what's happening behind the curtains or under the trunk of social media platform, for instance, and many other platforms, which is one of the topics. But before going there are a few general questions that I may want to ask the three of you to answer, but there is one which is specific to Andreas. So I would start maybe from that one. Andreas, when you were saying that we as a youth field, we think we are going we're doing better in order to offer better learning opportunities in the digital sphere, let's say. But young people indeed think we are not. The question is, which are the data which are you grounding this statement into? So do we have recent research about it that you can name or give a hint where to find it? Because this is attracting curiosity of our listener, Alessandra, which is asking this directly to you. So, Andreas, I will quickly give the floor to you to answer this, and then I would ask a few questions to the three of you, and then feel free to answer and engage with the question as you prefer. But before that, Andreas.
Cool. Yeah, easy. Good question and a quick answer to that as well. So that research is from the work we do with Ray on the analysis of the European youth programs. And one report, for example, you can look at is the data or research report that we have compiled for the previous program generation of the European Youth Program, Erasmus Plus Youth in Action, which covers the entire 7 years from 2014 to 2020. And there you very clearly see that trend of the more than 10,000 project team members that we have asked becoming more confident over those 7 years that what they do around media literacy and media competence is getting better. And project participants, which are more than 65,000 that we have surveyed in those 7 years. So those many thousand project participants on average remaining at the same level of skepticism or assessment about how well these competence development approaches work in the context of the European youth programs. Now, of course, youth work is much bigger than the European youth programs and international youth work, but we have also seen that in many other arenas playing out. And there are, of course, projects where that is not the case, and many examples, some of them we have just heard about in the panel, where that is decisively not the case. But if you look at the larger picture, that is what we are seeing. And you find the report just on researchyouth.net, the website of the Ray Network.
Thank you very much also for the reference where to find the data. So we were mentioning before a little debate ongoing in the comments regarding the algorithmic bias, let's say. So the fact that we need to become more aware, as Aisha is writing, of what's happening and how the algorithms are shaped and designed, and how things happen in this level. So the question is there something that you can add in regards to digital technology developments that maybe using algorithmic bias are or can be misused by government to endanger rights to participate, and maybe especially youth rights to participate and voice criticism in digital spaces? Is there any voice that would like to pick this up? Or I can ask the three of you your take and your opinion regarding this thing for you all. How technology can be misused in terms of not supporting digital rights, but actually the other way around, to endanger the rights to participate and to share the opinion.
I mean, there are really many examples of that happening, but also when you again look at it through the lens of research, sometimes the research about that is also a bit dubious, right? So, for example, we have heard many times, I think, in our field in particular, how YouTube tends to algorithmically steer its users to more extreme opinions, right? But most of that was based on research where the algorithm was tested by just letting videos run without any interaction, right? Which is, of course, not how people normally use YouTube. You press like, you press dislike, you comment. And so in your research that has tried to imitate sort of more human engagement with YouTube has actually found that the algorithm is not that much steering people into extreme corners of the web and the platform. So research about that is definitely still ongoing and emerging and building, I would say. But one good organization and platform to look at if anyone is interested in diving deeper into different examples is Algorithm Watch. Website is just algorithmwatch.org. They are also currently looking for a new project that they are doing for people who donate them their TikTok data. So that they can dive deeper into how TikTok's algorithm is steering people and also excluding people in certain ways, of which we have seen many examples of hashtags being blacklisted or being silenced, of people with particular body shapes and types being taken out of the algorithm and so on. So Algorithm Watch definitely a good place to look at, to dive deeper into the topic.
Thank you very much. I don't know if the other panelists want to add something or comment something on this.
Just in a more general sense, I would also add that, for example, when I talked about online advertisement that can be targeted and discriminatory, a clear example would be, for example, a housing advertiser that could use targeting tools to exclude people of certain ethnicities from seeing their ads for available housing units. We are also working on AI and the rule of law, and we've seen that criminal recidivism and facial recognition algorithms have shown to be biased against marginalized communities. This was also shown by a report made by ProPublica. Fake news, misinformation, and disinformation have also shown to have an immense impact on democracy. And another interesting one that I like to mention, because it goes to the extreme. So in Facebook in 2012, for example, had an emotional contagion test. So on a certain amount of users, they divided the users in two groups. And for half of the groups, they only showed positive content, and for the other half, only negative content. And immediately they noticed that there was a direct link between the news and the feeds you have on your social media platforms and the emotion and feelings you are feeling. People who were only shown negative content were feeling more emotional, were feeling sad, and the other way around. So then again, it shows this immense link between your emotions, your personal life, and what you see online. And this again shows that for youth and people now, for example, the generation Alpha, who is raised with Facebook and social media, for them, it's also critical to understand what all of this involves and the risks that play into it. They have to start learning, they have to start to think more critically and analyze the information that they see online and be able to know when to report something, when something is fake, when something is clearly dis or misinformation, and so on. So that was my little input on that.
Thank you very much. I don't know if Marina wants to add something or yes?
Yes, just
Yes.
very quickly, also from practice side, what we see happening in our community is that work with ChatGPT is extremely popular among young people, and the engagement with it is quite different. And sometimes it's something useful for the work or for the activities in school. Other times it's engaging in some kind of discussion and provoking certain answers. And what we are especially afraid of is the ethics of the algorithm, and especially if certain prompts would be asking about, for instance, what's the perfect gender of the PhD student, or of a doctor, or of any other profession, right? And then the algorithm would reply in a way that would be based on the current language and current information that is available to the system. Since the information fed has a certain bias, and there is lack of information and research and data provided to enlarge this view and provide more data, for instance, for LGBTQ plus rights and the community. This answers that are received from the algorithm from ChatGPT, for instance, could lead young people to have more bias, and if they take it as an answer and share it with their peers, and nobody would say anything against this because of the social pressure or other matters, then this could reinforce further and further bias. So this is where we have certain concern. What is the ethics and what is the ethical framework the algorithms are working on, and how can we already bring this topic for the discussion and know that this affects our target groups, and how can we have a more ethical algorithm to work with.
Thank you very much, Marina. Also, thank the three of you, because with your answer, you managed already to tackle a few topics that were there for asking, all of them regarding AI and ChatGPT, which you already mentioned in your answer so far. So I will give this answer for answered already, and move forward to another and last round of questions for the three of you all together. But also, I would like to extend this question to all of our audience. So feel free to give your own answer and share your own practices, since it's also about practices, to us all, using, as usual, the comments on the social media platform you are attending the streaming from. And the question is this one. As we try to do every time, we would ask you to share to you, the three of you, but also, as I said, to our audience, to share some tips and advices, even very simple and concrete, to our target of youth workers, about how they could put the topic of digital rights and ethics in their activities with young people, and more in their radar. So which could be the specific angles, which could be the issues, the practices, the topics that could become possible starting points, for instance, for bringing this reflection into youth work practices. And we are, as I said, curious to hear also from our audience if they have other practices or suggestions or things to share. Please feel free to put that in the comments, and also put links if you have references somewhere online of what you are sharing. I started one round with Marina. I started one round with Andreas. So I would maybe start this last round with Charlene, if it's okay for you. So I will leave the floor to you.
Of course. As we all know, youth workers have the power to influence and guide young people in understanding the importance of their rights and ethics. UNESCO has already engaged in this field around the world by advocacy, capacity building, research, and international cooperation. By increasing awareness of digital rights, youth workers and educators can help young people make more informed decisions and advocate for their own digital rights. In this context, for example, last summer, in the framework of UNESCO's work to harness emerging technology, UNESCO launched a comic strip called Inside AI, an Algorithmic Adventure, to help young adults explore and understand the impact of AI on humankind. UNESCO also focuses a lot on capacity building through training workshops, seminars, and MOOCs, massive open online courses. In this context, for example, in the context of youth, UNESCO and UNITAR launched a micro-learning course on AI and human rights for youths aged 16 to 24, where experts break down complex concepts about AI into straightforward activities built around our daily interactions. Originally, it was in 4 languages, but it garnered such interest, leading us to translate it into 20 more languages, with the launch scheduled end of this month. So this course is again a perfect example of the collaborative spirit across UN agencies to build capacity of the young generation to navigate this digital tech world more safely. So as I've mentioned earlier, UNESCO promotes media and information literacy. It does this through also trainings and especially MOOCs. Another way we have been training capacity building for justice actors, judicial actors, which can also be, of course, young adults that are interested in becoming justice actors. This MOOC on AI and the rule of law focuses on the capacity building of justice actors, on the potential and impact of emerging technologies, especially AI, on the rule of law. But in terms of clear recommendations for youth workers and educators, first, we need to foster digital literacy. This means encouraging them to develop skills to allow them to critically evaluate online information, recognize fake news, and protect themselves online. This can be done through the same activities as UNESCO has been doing, for example, through advocacy campaigns, training courses and workshops, or through research and a multi-stakeholder and international cooperative initiatives. We need young people to think critically about their online activities. And this includes training on advocacy on the importance of online privacy. It's also important for young people to understand that their online actions have consequences and leave a digital footprint. We need to teach them and train them on how to manage these footprints. One way to do so is one way to start a conversation, is to use real life examples. This can be done through interactive activities, as Marina said, such as role playing, group discussions, or debates. It will also allow them to relate more closely to the issue. For example, discuss what are the metrics behind your Instagram feed? What are cookies? What is content moderation? What is online harassment and how can you recognize and report it? Also important, we need to focus on bias in algorithms. We should train young adults to recognize a biased post or news article and to advocate for fair and just use of technology. More importantly, this comes all down to train young people on creating critical thinking skills. Digital media and information can be misleading, and it's time, and we must teach young people to question the sources of information they come across and to understand and have the tools to fact check. By having this open and inclusive, honest conversation with the young generation and youth workers and educators, we can help to become them more responsible digital citizens. Voilà. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlene. Same question, different voice. I would now ask Andreas to step in and give us some advices or recommendation from his perspective as well. Andreas, please.
The other way, the other button. Yeah, I mean, I would say for all of the things that that we have just heard in terms of educating young people, I come back to my point from the beginning. We need to educate ourselves, and we need to educate the professionals in our field. And for that, what I can recommend is, for one, if you work in a larger organization or in an administration, make sure to demand these kind of education opportunities for you and your teams. Start educating yourself on all of these issues, so that over time we as a field become more able to educate young people on them. Right? Because it's one thing to say we have to educate young people on all of that. Yes, that's true. But most importantly, have to qualify our people to be able to educate young people on these things. And at the moment, by majority in our field, we are not able to do that. Then team up with the many nerdy organizations that exist in this field. There is the EDRI network that has many members across Europe that you can check out. There is Algorithm Watch, which I mentioned. There is the Open Knowledge Foundation. And there are youth hacking programs. There is institutions like Werke, the digital center for competence in digital youth work. There is the Digital Youth Work EU platform and the principles on digital youth work that they have developed through an Erasmus Plus Key Action 2 project. There is in practically every country around the world a community active on and for Wikipedia. They are also always very, very good people to cooperate with for learning and for education offers. And then last but not least, even though it's a little bit of a maybe boring exercise, read up. I mean, the European Declaration on Digital Rights and Principles for the Digital Decade is not a bad place to start. The DICOM framework for digital competence is not a bad place to start either. Listen to podcasts. There are a couple of them around on these issues. Just start casually building learning on these things into your daily schedule so that educating young people becomes a real possibility for us.
Thank you very much, Andreas. Also, I'm taking the chance to give signals to Dace that she might maybe have something to share with Limonas and to show us regarding a graphic recording so far of the conversation ongoing, but we still have to hear from Marina. So Marina, the floor is yours to hear your recommendation, your tips, your advices for the youth field, from the youth field, regarding how to include digital rights and ethics in the conversation with young people.
I would like to follow up on what the previous panelist said and only emphasize that further education for us as practitioners, as youth workers, is much needed. We try our best, and for instance, inside the project I mentioned before, we developed a code of conduct with 10 principles for digital citizens who need to exercise digital rights and follow up with the digital responsibilities. And we test run it with youth workers and young people. And the main problem with this, although it does provide a useful tool, it doesn't help us to empathize with the problematic. And I think for this, we have to go and dive ourselves in this digital realm, to go and use TikTok to all of its extent, to spend 2 hours on it, see how where it brings us, to explore ChatGPT ourselves, to go and look for this experiences. And then if we are triggered that something is going wrong according to our ethics, according to our understanding of the relationship with this digital tool, then we can look for solutions. And the same with young people, engaging with them and asking how they use the tools, what do they feel using them, what is concerning for them. And by learning that there is a link that connected to their selves, we have better impact at tackling it. Because of course frameworks help us to go in certain directions, but they often are dry texts, and what we need to change behaviors and influence the attitudes, we have to find this humane link between the user of the tool and the digital tool, and work on this. That's from my side.
Thank you very much, Marina. So now maybe I'm curious to see if we can have a sneak peek of the graphic recording of the conversation so far. Maybe not the finalized version yet, but maybe some first draft hints that how can it be the final result that then will be later shared on SALTO social media platform. Let's see if Limonas can do us this little miracle to see the preview of yeah, here it comes. Perfect. All right, in shape of frames, but there's a lot of content there, and we also play this game to moving from one square to the next one. and going there, practices, projects, stakeholders, elements, everything is somewhere there. Yeah, what's digital citizenship made of? And yeah, free product. You are the product, as has been mentioned also here in our conversation. A lot of resources you can dive in, and this is something to pick up as a conclusion. Link between content and emotion was mentioned, and we need a human-centered digital transformation for sure, and to create digital spaces which are aware of human rights and digital rights then as an extension. All right, super. And as always, this will be finalized and then shared on social media platforms and channels of SALTO Participation and Information and SALTO Inclusion and Diversity. Also, all the links to the resources which were mentioned have been shared already in the comments below the streaming, and will stay there as a reference for everybody also watching the streaming and the videos later on. And before closing, a couple of recommendations from my side as well regarding activities going to happen in the next few weeks. So let me share my screen. Here we go. I guess you should be able to see this now. And this is the upcoming episode of the ID talks, as in SALTO Inclusion and Diversity. It's a series of online talks about understanding mental health, and the next one will be on March 15, and it will be about social media addiction. So another opportunity to dig deeper into some of the aspects connected to the digital transformation field. And last but not least, but indeed last, because it's the last of our panel series, on March 28th, we will be here again to discuss emerging technologies and innovation, always with a youth work field perspective. So make a date on your calendar, March 28th, we will meet again at 1 CET on the same social media channels for another panel discussion. That said, I would really like to thank all our panelists. It has been a very long and rich list of elements that we tackled, from digital rights being an extension of human rights to very specific aspects of artificial intelligence and how algorithm can shape and influence our rights and our way to use digital spaces, and so many resources, so many possible elements to be used, that my final invitation would really be indeed to dive into this sea of opportunities. But in order to dive properly, you need to know how to swim. And so educate yourself and find in these resources a way to improve your knowledge and literacy on these topics. Thank you again, really, Marina, Charlene, Andreas. Thank you so much for being with us. And thank you, everybody who attended the discussion and contributed with comments, with questions, with notes on social media. And as I said, we will meet again on March 28th for the last panel discussion regarding emerging technologies. Until then, bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.